It is election night in Texas for the primary runoffs. A busy night here, and right now, team coverage of tonight's results from Ashley Goudeau, Bryan Mays, Daniel Perot, Darrenisha Heron, and Tony Plahetsky.
All right, let's start this off with Ashley and Bryan with the latest results.
All right, it was, of course, a big night, is a big night across the state. We want to go to our board here and start looking at those election results. Of course, the race that everyone was talking about, the top one that everyone watching, U.S. Senate primary runoff for Republicans.
Not just here in Texas, but around the country. And you can see a significant victory tonight for Ken Paxton, the Attorney General. When you go back to the primary, pretty close race. Of course, a bigger field back then. We wondered where all those votes were going to go. Most of them went to the Attorney General tonight. Yeah,
significant to also look at turnout. You have about half of the number of voters who turned out this time around compared to in March, but still a decisive win for Attorney General Ken Paxton. Now, when we talk about some of the other races that we were looking at, the Democrats had to decide who was going to face Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick in November.
Vicki Goodwin with 68.2% of the vote. Again, about 70% reporting at this hour, but the check mark is there. The race has been called. It will be Vicki Goodwin and Dan Patrick in November.
Yeah, that check mark means that the AP has called a winner in this race. It's not Bryan and me making check marks. We'd like to make our own check marks. They don't give us that power, so we just go with what the AP says. The other big race that a lot of people were watching and I thought was really going to be telling was for Republican Attorney General. This is who is hoping to take Ken Paxton's seat.
It's an important seat. Let's go back to March, and you can see these two men at the top of the ticket again at that point. But look at the difference in color. The same color, Chip Roy in gold, Mays Middleton in green. A little bit more green. In fact, a lot more green tonight in the runoff.
Yeah, and you know, this is one of those races that was really hard fought. You had Mays Middleton putting up a lot of money, giving his campaign $20 million of his own dollars, you know, family in the oil business compared to Chip Roy. He did get a late infusion of money, though, but at the end of the day, I think those ads, that MAGA Mays message is what really resonated with voters.
You saw that a lot more than $30 million spent just in this race on the Republican side. This is going to be interesting to see as we head toward November as well.
I hadn't heard the term before, but someone said wallet whipped to me
wallet
before.
Whipped.
Wallet whipped is what you had some folks doing in these races. Of course, the question tonight was who was he going to face on the Democratic side? State Senator Nathan Johnson walking away with the win tonight.
Not near as much money spent on this side of the Attorney General race.
Not even close.
We will see going toward November how that changes. Nathan Johnson will be the nominee on the Democratic side. Again, Mays Middleton will spend a lot of money. We've seen that already as we head toward November.
The thing that I think was really interesting about this particular race was that voter turnout. When you look at the number of people who voted in this race in March, Bryan, you had 2 million people. Compared to right now, we're at about 70% reporting, and that is not even half.
Less than half, yeah. And look how close he got. He almost got there in March, but had to go to the runoff. And again, not quite the turnout we had in March, but enough for Nathan Johnson to get the nod tonight.
And a really big road, I think, ahead for Johnson is getting that name recognition out there, getting people to know who he is. Obviously, I think at this point, Texans know MAGA Mays Middleton.
We've seen the commercials.
They don't know a Nathan Johnson at all. Now, this race still not called, guys. And this is one of those races when we talk about what happens with an endorsement and a fight over endorsements. And this is for Railroad Commissioner, which we want to note has nothing to do with railroads.
It's all about oil and gas.
This is oil and gas.
Not about trains and train tracks.
No, not at all. And you have incumbent Jim Wright, who was endorsed by Governor Greg Abbott, but Beau French, a former GOP chair, endorsed by Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, and really a strong rebuke from Governor Abbott, who said French would wreck oil and gas in Texas if he wins. But this race is still very close.
Very close, and it's going to come down to, I think, some big cities, Houston and Dallas. Look at Southeast Texas here. With 50.9%, you've got a lot of gold in that part, and we know oil and gas in Houston and Southeast Texas is a big part of the economy there.
And, you know, and so that almost tells you that maybe these folk here in Houston, the people in Dallas dealing with oil, you know, the finance parts of it, want to see some change when it comes to regulation of that industry. There were also some congressional races that we were watching tonight, including a runoff for U.S. District 17. This is who will face off against Congressman Pete Sessions in November.
A Republican-heavy district, I think it'd be fair to say. Just about 7,500 people turned out to vote, but Casey Shepherd, it's a little bit different than we saw back in March.
Sure.
We saw Flores with a few more votes then. Tonight, a different story as Casey Shepherd will get the nod.
It flip-flopped, and when we go down to District 37, this is that newly redrawn district, and Congressman Greg Casar, who right now represents District 35, is going to be the Democratic nominee in November for this district.
Lloyd Doggett is no longer running, and that is going to be the race. You'll see Lauren Pena and Greg Casar on the ballot in November.
Last but certainly not least, we want to talk about State House, Texas House District 49. This is State Representative Gina Hinojosa's district. She's now the Democratic nominee for governor, and we have a winner in this race.
That's right. There will not be an opposition for November, so this is the race tonight. With
Montserrat Garibay with 61%. She's a former Biden administration leader.
So a big win tonight for her.
Yep. All right. So that's it for our quick rundown of the races. More details from our reporters, right, Mark and Guida?